I found out my boyfriend has been running a secret Instagram account where he tells women I am his pathetic, unemployed ex who will not move out. Not his girlfriend, not his partner, his ex. A deadbeat roommate he feels sorry for. And the absolute wildest part, he convinced me 7 months ago to delete all my social media because his real estate brokerage had this new security policy and it would look bad if his girlfriend was posting online while he had to stay off everything. I actually believed him. I deleted Instagram, Facebook, everything, because I thought I was being supportive of his career. Turns out there was no company policy. There was just Jake, CrossFit enthusiast, real estate agent who thought he was the next $1 million listing star, maintaining a whole secret life online while I sat at home like an idiot with zero social media presence. My friend Tasha found it completely by accident. She was scrolling through Instagram last week and one of those suggested accounts popped up. You know how the algorithm works, showing you people based on mutual connections or whatever? She clicks on it and there is Jake. Jake with his gym selfies and his flexing photos and his stories about being single and ready to build his empire. She sent me screenshots and I literally thought she was pranking me at first. This had to be a fake account, right? Someone catfishing using his photos? But no, it was verified through mutual friends, same locations we had been to, same CrossFit box he goes to every morning at 5:30 a.m., which I always thought was dedication to fitness, but now I am realizing was probably dedication to filming thirst traps in the locker room mirror. The account had been active for at least 7 months. 7 months of carefully curated posts about his solo adventures and single life and focusing on myself. And here is where it gets so much worse. Remember those vacation photos we took in Savannah back in April? The ones where we went to Tybee Island and did that whole historic district weekend for our anniversary? Every single photo on his Instagram from that trip had me cropped out. Not just untagged, cropped out. There is this one photo where you can literally see my hand on his shoulder in the corner of the frame because he could not crop it out completely. The caption, solo coastal vibes, nothing better than traveling alone and clearing your head. I was right there. We shared a king bed in that boutique hotel. I paid for half the trip and he is posting about traveling alone. Tasha sent me probably 40 screenshots and I went through every single one trying to process what I was seeing. The comments were even worse. Girls flirting with him asking where he lived, saying they should meet up, and he was responding. Not just liking comments, actually responding with flirty messages back. One girl commented asking if he had a girlfriend and he replied, I have this screenshot burned into my brain forever. Nah, I have got a roommate situation I am dealing with, but nothing serious. She is nobody, just some unemployed loser I feel sorry for. Probably going to kick her out soon, lol. Unemployed loser. For context. Because I know someone is going to ask, I am not unemployed. I work weekends at a veterinary clinic as a receptionist because I am finishing my degree in animal science. I am 27 and went back to school after working retail for a few years to save up. The vet clinic job does not pay amazing. Yeah, but it works with my class schedule and I am 4 months away from graduating. Jake knew this. He was supposedly supportive. He said he was proud of me for going back to school. Guess he was just tolerating me until he could find someone better. There was another comment thread where some girl asked about a woman's voice she heard in his Instagram stories because apparently I am in the background of some of his videos, and you can hear me talking. His response, oh, that is just my pathetic ex who will not move out. Total deadbeat. I am working on getting rid of her. Pathetic ex who will not move out. We live together. We live together in an apartment that I found, by the way. I was living there first and he moved in 10 months ago when his lease ended because it made financial sense and we were serious about each other. The lease is in my name. He pays half the rent, but it is my apartment legally. But somehow in his version of reality, I am the ex who will not leave his place. Tasha kept sending me more screenshots, and with each one, I felt like I was watching my entire relationship dissolve in real time. There were posts about him being finally free and living his best single life and done with toxic relationships. And the gym photos. So many gym photos. Shirtless bathroom selfies with captions about being focused on self-improvement and cutting dead weight from my life. The comments were always the same. Women telling him how hot he was, how they would love to work out with him, asking if he wanted to grab drinks. He responded to basically all of them. Made plans to meet up with at least 4 different women that I could see in the DMs that Tasha managed to screenshot. Long story, but one of the girls who had been messaging him was friends with Tasha's coworker and showed her the conversation when she realized they were talking about the same Jake. In these messages, he was telling girls they should come over to his place after his roommate finally leaves for her minimum wage job in the morning. My morning shifts at the veterinary clinic. He was literally timing hookups around my work schedule. I am reading all of this while sitting on our couch, his place according to him, and trying to figure out what the actual hell was happening. How do you even process something like this? Your boyfriend has not just been cheating. He has been living a completely different reality where you do not exist as his partner. You are just some annoying obstacle he is trying to remove from his life. I did not confront him immediately. I know some people are going to say I should have, but I was in shock. I just sat there with all these screenshots on my phone watching him come home from showing houses that evening, like everything was normal, asking me what we should order for dinner, complaining about a difficult client, being completely casual like he was not telling the entire internet that I was a deadbeat ex. That night, I barely slept. I kept looking at the photos, reading the comments, trying to understand how someone could be that two-faced, in bed next to me. He was scrolling on his phone, probably on that secret Instagram I was not supposed to know about, while I pretended to be asleep. The next morning, he got up for his 5:30 a.m. CrossFit session like always. I heard him in the bathroom taking photos. The sounds are different when you know what you are listening for. He left and I laid there thinking about every morning he had done this exact same routine for the past 7 months. Getting up early, going to CrossFit, taking thirst trap photos, posting them for other women, coming home to me like nothing happened. I went to work that day and could not concentrate on anything. My coworker Morgan asked if I was okay because I kept zoning out in the middle of checking in patients. I did not tell her what was going on because honestly I did not know how to explain it. How do you say my boyfriend has a secret Instagram where he pretends I do not exist? After my shift ended, I sat in my car in the veterinary clinic parking lot and went through everything again, made sure I had all the screenshots saved, went through the timeline of when he had asked me to delete my social media versus when his account started getting active, looked at every single post and comment and message. And that is when I decided I was not going to just confront him. I was going to be strategic about this. Because here is the thing. Jake thinks he is so smart. He thinks he has got everything figured out. He has been running this whole operation for 7 months and in his mind I am too stupid or too broke or too dependent on him to do anything about it even if I found out. That what are you going to do? You cannot even afford rent without me. Energy was radiating from every single one of those Instagram posts. The way he talked about me like I was some charity case he was stuck with. The way he had positioned himself as this successful single real estate agent who was too good for commitment. He really thought he had all the power here. So I started planning, and I am not going to lie, some of you are probably going to think I went too far with what I did. But honestly, after reading that, I was a pathetic ex and an unemployed loser and a deadbeat who needed to be kicked out of his apartment, which again is literally my apartment. I stopped caring about going too far. I spent 3 days acting completely normal while I figured everything out. Made dinner with him, watched TV on the couch, listened to him talk about his real estate deals. The whole time I am just thinking about those Instagram posts and planning my next move. Okay, this is getting really long, so I am going to post an update soon with what happened next because trust me, you want to hear this part. Shout out to everyone who has been messaging me asking for updates. I see you and I am getting there. Update. Okay, so a bunch of you have been asking, what happened when I confronted Jake? And honestly, this is where things got absolutely insane. First, I want to address some comments I saw. Yes, I know legally he is a tenant, and I cannot just kick him out same day even though the lease is in my name. I am not an idiot, but I also was not planning to play by normal breakup rules because this was not a normal breakup situation. This was a man who had been publicly humiliating me online for 7 months while using my apartment as his personal hookup spot. So anyway, that third day, I waited until he got home from showing properties around 6:30 p.m. like usual. He walked in, all relaxed, threw his messenger bag by the door. That damn messenger bag that I now knew was full of outfit changes for his Instagram photos and asked what I wanted to do for dinner, like it was just another day. I was sitting on the couch with my laptop open. I had spent the afternoon making a very special binder. Yeah, you read that right. A printed binder with screenshots of every single Instagram post, every comment, every DM that Tasha had managed to get, organized by date with timestamps and everything. I called it Male Manipulator Manifesto Volume 1 on the cover page. I told him we needed to talk and he should probably sit down. He got this confused look on his face but sat down in the armchair across from me. He asked what was going on and I just handed him the binder. The first page was titled Jake's Secret Life with his Instagram handle at Real Estate Rising Jake in big letters and his profile picture one of those shirtless CrossFit selfies where he is flexing in the mirror. I wish I could describe the look on his face. It went from confusion to recognition to absolute panic in about 3 seconds. He started to say something but I held up my hand and told him no. He was going to look at every single page before he said anything. So I made him sit there while he flipped through the entire binder. Every cropped vacation photo, every comment where he called me a deadbeat, every message where he invited women over during my work hours, the one where he said I was his pathetic ex who would not move out, all of it. By page 15, he was trying to interrupt saying I needed to let him explain that it was not what it looked like, that I was taking things out of context. I just kept pointing at the binder for him to continue. Page 20 showed the comment thread where he told some girl named Ashley that his roommate situation would be resolved soon and she should come visit when he got his new listing in Myers Park. When he finally finished the binder, 43 pages total, I counted, I took it back and just looked at him. He immediately went into damage control mode, started talking fast about how the Instagram was just for networking, how real estate agents need social media presence, how he never actually met up with any of those women, how the comments did not mean anything, how I was overreacting to what was basically just marketing and everyone exaggerates online. I asked him about the company's security policy that made me delete all my social media. He stuttered for a second and then said his brokerage did have concerns about agents' significant others posting things that could affect deals and he was just trying to protect both of us. When I pointed out that he had an active Instagram account while supposedly being under this policy, he said it was different because he was in real estate and needed social media for client acquisition. Client acquisition, he called posting shirtless CrossFit selfies and telling women I was a deadbeat client acquisition. Then he tried a different approach. He said the account was from before we got serious and he just never updated his relationship status. He claimed he barely posted anymore and those comments were all old. I pulled up my phone and showed him a comment from 2 days ago where he responded to a girl asking if he was single with "yeah, completely single and crushing my goals." That is when he started getting defensive instead of apologetic. He said I had no right to go through his social media, that having a professional Instagram account was not cheating. He said a lot of real estate agents maintain separate personas for business and I was being controlling by making this into a huge deal. I reminded him that I would not even know about his professional account if I still had my own social media, which he convinced me to delete under false pretenses. He said that was a separate issue and I was conflating two different things. We went back and forth like this for probably an hour. Every time I brought up something specific, the cropped photos, calling me unemployed, inviting women over, he had some explanation that somehow made it not as bad as it seemed. The photos were cropped for aesthetic composition. He was venting about our relationship to network connections, which everyone does. He never actually had anyone over and it was just talk. But here is what really got me. He kept circling back to this idea that I was being crazy and irrational. He said I was letting my friend poison my mind and turn something harmless into a relationship-ending crisis. He said, Tasha probably had her own agenda and wanted to break us up. He said I needed to calm down and think logically about this instead of letting my emotions control me. The audacity. This man had been running a secret Instagram for 7 months where he pretended to be single and I was the one being irrational. I told him he had 24 hours to move out. Just said it flat out. 24 hours, pack your stuff and leave. That is when he completely switched tactics. Suddenly he was apologizing, saying he made a huge mistake, that he would delete the Instagram immediately, that we could work through this. He said he loved me and he did not want to throw away years over some stupid social media account. He actually started tearing up talking about how much I meant to him and how scared he was of losing me. And for like 30 seconds I almost believed him. Because that is the thing about someone you have been with for 3 years, you want to believe them when they say they are sorry. You want to think the person you fell in love with is still in there somewhere. But then I remembered that comment. Total deadbeat. I am working on getting rid of her. And the tears did not matter. I told him the apology would have meant something if I had found out about this 2 weeks in, not 7 months in. 7 months of lying. 7 months of humiliating me online. 7 months of planning hookups during my work shifts. That is not a mistake. That is a whole separate life. He kept trying to argue, saying I could not just kick him out because he lived here too and paid rent. I reminded him the lease was in my name and legally I had options. He said he would refuse to leave and I would have to go through formal eviction, which would take months. So I told him fine, do not leave. But I was calling his mother. This is where I need to give some backstory. Jake's mother, Linda, is extremely religious, extremely traditional Southern, and thinks Jake is the perfect son. She has always been kind of cold to me because she does not think anyone is good enough for her precious boy. But she also has very strong opinions about how relationships should work, and lying is basically the worst sin you can commit in her book. Jake went pale when I said I was calling Linda. He told me I would not dare, that was manipulative, and bringing parents into a relationship issue was immature. I picked up my phone and started scrolling for her contact. He tried to grab my phone, but I moved away and told him if he touched me or my phone, I would call the cops before I called his mother. He backed off but kept saying I was being ridiculous, that his mother had nothing to do with this, that I was just trying to hurt him now instead of actually dealing with our problems. I said no. I was going to make sure everyone in his life knew exactly who he really was, since he had been working so hard to make sure everyone in his online life knew who I supposedly was. I called Linda right there on speakerphone. She answered all cheerful, asking how I was doing, and I told her I was doing terrible actually because I needed to tell her something about Jake and she should probably be sitting down. Jake was frantically whispering at me to hang up, that I was making a huge mistake, but I ignored him. I told Linda everything. The secret Instagram. The posts calling me a deadbeat and an ex, the fake company policy that made me delete my social media, the women he was messaging, the invitations to come over during my work hours, all of it. There was silence on the other end for a solid 10 seconds. Then Linda asked to speak to Jake. He took the phone off speaker and walked into the bedroom. I could hear him through the door trying to explain, saying I was exaggerating, that it was all a misunderstanding, that I was having some kind of episode and believing things that were not true. Linda's voice came through the door loud enough that I could hear her asking him to explain the screenshots, then explain the comments, explain why he lied about the company policy. The conversation went on for maybe 20 minutes. When Jake came back out, he looked like he had been hit by a truck. He handed me the phone and Linda asked me if I had somewhere else to stay tonight because she was coming over tomorrow morning and she expected Jake to be packed and ready to leave with her. I told her I was not going anywhere because this was my apartment. There was another pause, then she said she would be there at 9 a.m. and Jake better be ready to explain himself to his father too. After I hung up, Jake just stood there staring at me. He said I just ruined his relationship with his parents over a fight about social media. He said I was vindictive and cruel, and he could not believe I would stoop that low. I told him he could sleep on the couch and tomorrow he would be leaving with his mother like she said. He tried to argue more, but I went into the bedroom and locked the door. I barely slept that night. I kept hearing him moving around in the living room, kept expecting him to try to knock on the bedroom door and keep arguing, but he did not. The next morning I woke up around 7:30 a.m. and came out to find him aggressively shoving stuff into suitcases. He would not look at me, just kept packing in angry silence while I made coffee in the kitchen. Around 8:45, his phone started ringing. He looked at it and ignored the call. It rang again. And again. Finally he answered and I heard him say, "Mom, I am almost ready. You do not need to come up." But apparently Linda was not taking no for an answer because 10 minutes later there was knocking on the door. I answered it and Linda walked in looking like she was dressed for church but ready for war. She was in this navy blue dress with her hair done all perfect and her face was set in this expression that clearly said someone was about to get lectured into next week. She nodded at me politely, then turned to Jake and asked if he had everything packed. And here's where things took another turn, because Jake's father Charles was standing in the hallway behind her. Final update. Okay, so I am writing this from my friend Tasha's house because I needed to get out of my apartment for a few days while everything settles down, and holy hell you guys, the last few days have been absolutely unhinged. So where I left off, Linda showed up at 9 a.m. in her navy blue church dress, looking ready to destroy someone's entire existence. And Jake's dad Charles was standing behind her in the hallway. Charles is this quiet guy who lets Linda do most of the talking, but when he does talk, people listen. He is ex-military, has this whole disappointed sergeant energy that is somehow worse than yelling. They both came into my apartment and Linda told Jake to finish packing while she and Charles talked to me in the kitchen. She asked if I had copies of everything I had told her about on the phone and I showed her the binder on my laptop. She went through every single page with this expression that got darker and darker, and Charles looked over her shoulder reading the comments where Jake called me a deadbeat and a pathetic ex. When they finished looking, Linda closed the binder and asked me how long this had been going on. I told her at least 7 months that I knew of. Probably longer. She asked if Jake had actually brought other women to the apartment and I said I did not know for sure but he had been trying to based on the messages. Charles asked why Jake had me delete my social media, and I explained the fake company policy. He got this look on his face and said, that did not make any sense because real estate agents need their significant others to have social media for networking and referrals. They actually encourage it. He would know because he has a buddy who owns a real estate firm in Ballantyne. This was news to me, and I said as much. Charles said the whole story sounded fabricated and he wanted to hear Jake's explanation directly. They called Jake into the kitchen and Linda asked him to explain the company policy that required me to delete my social media. Jake started spinning this story about how his broker had mentioned that significant others posting online could create liability issues if deals fell through and he was just being cautious, protecting both of us. Charles cut him off and asked which broker said this. Jake named his managing broker, some guy named Mr. Palmer. Charles pulled out his phone and said he was going to call Palmer right now and verify this policy. Jake panicked. He said that was not necessary, that maybe he had misunderstood what Palmer said, that it might not have been an official policy but more like a suggestion. Linda asked him why he would present a suggestion as a mandatory policy that required me to delete all my social media accounts. Jake tried to say he was just being overprotective, and I was reading too much into how he had phrased things. I jumped in and said no. He specifically told me it was a company requirement, and if I did not comply it could affect his real estate license. I asked him to explain why he needed me to have zero online presence while he was running an Instagram account telling everyone he was single. That is when Jake switched to being defensive again. He said the Instagram was for professional networking and I never would have known about it if my friend had not gone snooping. He said I was violating his privacy by looking at his social media without permission. Linda asked him if he seriously thought privacy was the issue here when he had been publicly calling me names and lying about our relationship status online. She asked him what he thought would happen when I eventually found out because lies like this always come out eventually. Jake said he was planning to rebrand the account, that he had just gotten caught up in the image consulting aspect of real estate marketing and it spiraled out of control. He said he never meant for it to go this far and he was going to update it before I found out. Charles asked when exactly he was planning to update it. Jake said soon, he had been thinking about it for a while. Charles said that was interesting because the comments were from 2 days ago, which does not sound like someone planning to stop. The conversation went in circles like this for over an hour. Every time Jake gave an explanation, his parents would poke holes in it with specific questions. Every time he tried to minimize what he had done, I would bring up another screenshot or comment that proved it was worse than he was admitting. At one point, Linda asked him directly if he had been unfaithful. Jake swore he had not actually cheated, that all the messages were just networking and he never followed through. Charles asked why they should believe him when he had been lying about everything else for 7 months. Jake started getting agitated and said everyone was ganging up on him and not letting him explain. He said he made mistakes but I was dragging his parents into it to punish him instead of trying to work things out like adults. He looked at me and said I was being vindictive and trying to turn his family against him. I told him I did not need to turn anyone against him. His own actions did that. I said I called his mother because he tried to claim he could refuse to leave my apartment, and I wanted his family to know the kind of person he really was before he spun some victim story about his crazy ex-girlfriend. Linda asked what he meant about refusing to leave and Jake said I was trying to illegally evict him without proper notice. I clarified that he had been living here 10 months paying half the rent but the lease was solely in my name, and after discovering he had been planning to have other women over in my home, I wanted him gone immediately. Charles said they were taking him home with them today regardless and he could figure out his living situation from there. Jake tried to argue that he had showings scheduled and could not just leave, but Charles said he could cancel them or have another agent cover. He needed to deal with this mess first. That is when things got even more complicated, because Jake's phone kept buzzing during this whole conversation. Finally, Linda told him to answer it or turn it off because it was interrupting. He looked at the screen and his face went weird and he said it was just work stuff, he would deal with it later. But his phone kept ringing. After the fourth call, Charles just took the phone from Jake's hand and answered it himself. It was Jake's managing broker, Mr. Palmer, the same Palmer who allegedly instituted the social media policy. Charles put it on speaker and Palmer was asking Jake why he had not shown up for the weekly sales meeting that started 45 minutes ago. This was the third time this month he had no-showed an important meeting, and if he did not have a good explanation, he needed to come to the office immediately to discuss his future with the brokerage. And this is where Charles absolutely destroyed Jake's entire world, and I got to watch every beautiful second of it. Charles told Palmer that Jake would not be working there anymore. Period. Palmer sounded confused and asked if this was really Jake's father and what was going on. Charles said yes, this was his father, and Jake had some serious personal issues to deal with that made it clear he was not mature enough to handle a professional real estate career. Palmer started saying something about contracts and commission splits and proper notice. But Charles cut him off and said Jake would send a formal resignation by end of day. Palmer asked to speak to Jake directly and Charles said no. Jake had made enough poor decisions lately and Charles was making this one for him. Charles said he had already found Jake a new position that was more appropriate for his current level of maturity, working night shifts at the Amazon Fulfillment Center in Concord. There was silence on the other end, then Palmer said something like, "Oh well, good luck with that," and hung up. Jake absolutely lost it. He was yelling about how Charles had no right to quit his job for him, how he was a grown man who could make his own decisions, how this was insane and controlling and he was not going to accept it. Charles just looked at him with this ice-cold expression and said if Jake wanted to act like a grown man, he should have done that before spending 7 months lying to everyone and publicly humiliating his girlfriend online. He said, "Grown men do not create fake personas on social media to get attention from other women. Grown men do not manipulate their partners into deleting their social media with made-up company policies. Grown men take responsibility for their actions." Jake said Charles could not force him to quit his real estate career. Charles said he just did, and if Jake had a problem with it, he was welcome to call Palmer back and try to explain why he should keep his license after missing multiple meetings and clearly having no focus or reliability. Linda jumped in and said they had already discussed this on the drive over and they were in complete agreement. Jake was moving back home, leaving his real estate career and starting work at the Amazon warehouse on Monday, working the overnight shift from 10 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. He would be loading trucks, scanning packages, walking 15 miles a night on concrete floors, whatever they needed. Jake said they could not be serious. A warehouse job, he had a degree, he had a real estate license. They could not make him work in a warehouse like he was some kind of failure. Charles said Jake should have thought about his career before spending his work hours taking shirtless selfies for Instagram and messaging women instead of actually showing properties. He said the warehouse position paid $18 an hour, required him to clock in and out with a supervisor watching, and maybe some actual manual labor loading boxes all night would teach him the value of honest work and humility. I was just standing there watching this whole thing unfold and I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing. Watching Mr. Real Estate Rising Star find out he was about to spend his nights loading trucks in a warehouse was better than any revenge I could have planned myself. Jake tried arguing more, but Linda shut him down and said this was not a discussion. This was what was happening. She said he had thrown away a good career and a good relationship for Instagram likes and attention from random women, and now he was going to spend his nights loading packages and living with his parents. Jake turned to me like I was going to defend him or say this was too harsh. But I just smiled and said his parents were being generous by finding him any job at all. I said honestly, working in a warehouse seemed pretty fitting for someone who had spent 7 months treating me like a package he was trying to return online. He looked like I had slapped him. He said I was a vindictive witch who was enjoying watching him suffer. I said, damn right, I was enjoying it. After reading him call me a pathetic ex and a deadbeat loser for 7 months while he posted thirst traps pretending to be single, watching him go from fake successful real estate agent to actual warehouse worker living with his parents was absolutely hilarious, and he deserved every second of it. Linda told us both to stop because arguing was not solving anything. She said Jake was leaving with them right now. Period. He could stay in their guest room, work his warehouse job, and maybe after a few months of loading trucks all night and coming home exhausted, he would learn some humility and understand what real work looked like. Jake tried one more time to argue that he could stay here and work things out with me, that we did not need to break up over this, that making him work in a warehouse was humiliating and an overreaction. He actually had tears in his eyes talking about how his whole life was falling apart. I looked at him and said, good. I said his life should fall apart because he had built it on lies and fake Instagram posts. I said I hoped every single girl who had been flirting with him on Instagram found out he was now living with his parents and loading boxes for $18 an hour. I said maybe he could update his Instagram bio to single living with mom and dad, professional package handler. He called me cruel and heartless. I said no. Cruel was calling me an unemployed loser online for 7 months. Heartless was cropping me out of vacation photos and telling people I was his pathetic ex who would not move out. I said he was just mad because his little fake life got exposed and now he had to face actual consequences. Charles cut in and said regardless of how we felt about each other, Jake needed to leave today. He said Jake would be reporting to the Amazon Fulfillment Center Monday night at 9:30 p.m. for orientation, and if he was even 5 minutes late or complained about the work, Charles would personally make sure he stayed in that position for a full year. It took another 30 minutes for Jake to gather all his immediate stuff. He kept looking at me like he expected me to feel sorry for him, but I just kept thinking about those Instagram comments and feeling zero sympathy. Finally, Charles picked up 2 of the suitcases and told Jake to grab the rest and let us go. At the door, Jake turned around one last time and said I was going to regret this, that I was throwing away a good relationship because I could not handle him having a professional social media account. He said I had ruined his life by calling his parents and now he was losing everything. His job, his apartment, his girlfriend, and he would be spending his nights loading boxes because of me. I looked him dead in the eye and said the only thing I regretted was not finding out about his secret Instagram sooner so I could have dumped his lying ass months ago. I said have fun with your new career as a warehouse worker. Maybe you will finally be doing work that matches your personality, moving heavy boxes around because you are definitely not smart enough to move houses. Then I shut the door in his face. After they left, I literally did a happy dance in my apartment. Tasha came over that evening and I told her everything. The binder presentation, his parents showing up, Charles answering Palmer's call and quitting Jake's job, telling Palmer that Jake would be working at Amazon now. We drank wine and laughed about how the Instagram king was now going to be the package king. The next few days were amazing. Jake started messaging me these long, pathetic paragraphs about how his parents had ruined his life, how he could not believe his own father had quit his real estate career and signed him up to load trucks. How humiliating this was. Every message just made me laugh harder. Then he sent me a message saying he had started his first shift at the warehouse and it was absolutely degrading. He said he was literally loading heavy boxes onto trucks for hours, scanning packages until his eyes hurt, walking on concrete floors until his feet were killing him. He said people from his old CrossFit gym had already heard about it and were definitely talking about it. I responded this time just to say I hoped someone took a photo of him in his Amazon warehouse vest and posted it online so all those Instagram girls who thought he was so hot could see what he was really up to these days. I said maybe he should make a new Instagram account called Package Handler Jake and post selfies with cardboard boxes. Then I blocked him on everything. A few days later, Linda sent me a message checking in. She said Jake was having a very hard time adjusting to his new reality. She said the first few nights he came home exhausted and smelling like cardboard and would not stop complaining. She said he kept saying the work was beneath him and humiliating and everyone was laughing at him. She said she told him that is exactly the point. He needed to learn humility and what real work felt like after spending months pretending to be some successful player online. I told Linda I appreciated her taking him out of my apartment and holding him accountable. She said she was mortified by his behavior and the things he had said about me online. She said they had raised him better than that, and clearly he needed a serious reality check. She said the warehouse job would continue for at least 6 months, no matter how much he complained. That was a week ago. According to Mutuals and Linda's updates, Jake is still living with mommy and daddy, getting up at 9 p.m. to put on his warehouse vest and load packages all night, coming home at 7 a.m. smelling like a fulfillment center, too tired to do anything but shower and sleep. The guy who called me an unemployed loser is now making $18 an hour doing manual labor while I am finishing my degree. The dude who said I was his pathetic ex who would not move out is now living in his childhood bedroom with his parents watching his every move. Some people in the comments said I went too far by calling his parents and that I am being too happy about his situation. But you know what? He spent 7 months publicly humiliating me, calling me names, planning to cheat on me in my apartment, lying to my face every single day. And all I did was tell his parents the truth and let them handle their son however they wanted. If Jake is now loading boxes for a living, that is not on me. That is on him for being a lying, cheating, manipulative jerk who could not keep his lies straight. His father decided he was not mature enough for a real estate career. His mother decided he needed to learn what real work was. I did not make those decisions. His own behavior did. And yeah, I am enjoying knowing that all those women he was trying to impress now know he is a warehouse worker living with his parents. I am enjoying the fact that Mr. Solo Adventures and single and crushing my goals is actually scanning packages in a warehouse at 3 a.m. while I am moving on with my actual life. My lease is up in 5 months and I am definitely moving to a new place. Fresh start, just me. My degree 4 months away from done, my veterinary clinic job, and zero tolerance for lying wannabe real estate moguls. Because if there is one thing I learned from all this, it is that sometimes the best revenge is just letting someone face the natural consequences of their actions, and watching them go from Instagram influencer to warehouse worker living with their parents, that is just the cherry on top.